This story takes place in ancient Greece. Now, Greece now is a big piece of land that comes off the southern part of Europe into the Mediterranean Sea. It's also composed of lots and lots of islands, some big and some small. But in the olden days, back in ancient times, each island and each city was almost like a different country and had different rulers, different kings. On one of these islands was a king called Minos. His island was called Crete, Crete, Crete. You can go there on holidays. Well, you will be able to once you can again. Crete is an island, and King Minos, he was thought of as a cruel king. Now, for reasons that I won't go into right now, this is a story for another time. His wife gave birth to a monster, part human, part animal. It was a man with the head of a bull. They called it the Minotaur. And even though the queen tried to look after it, as it grew and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, it became more and more furious, more and more aggressive. And the only thing it would eat was human flesh. Eventually, it became too hard to control and they couldn't keep it in the palace. And so King Minos turned around to an excellent inventor and engineer called Daedalus and said, "Build me a place where I can keep the Minotaur." So Daedalus constructed a maze. He built a maze of passages under the ground. Passages that it was rumored once entered, no one could find their way out from. Now we know this today as the Labyrinth. And into the labyrinth, the Minotaur was banished. But as it only ate human flesh, they would have to sacrifice slaves to it. Now at the same time, King Minos, in his unending quest for power and possessions, he was making war on a city-state called Athens. Athens is now the capital of Greece, but then it would have just been a city, perhaps with walls around it. And King Minos would send his navies sailing from Greece up the coast and finding the Athenian port, and there making war with the Athenians themselves. Now the king of Athens, Aegeus, he just couldn't keep up. He did not have enough soldiers, he did not have enough boats to keep fighting King Minos, and eventually he had to give in. King Minos said he would leave him in peace if every year he would send 7 young women, 7 young men to Crete to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. And so there was peace, no more war. And that was fine. Was it? The price of peace, though, was every year 14 young men and women were taken and murdered and eaten by the monster, a sacrifice to the Minotaur just to keep the peace. Now, King Aegeus had a son. His son was called Theseus, Prince Theseus, if you want to be accurate. And he decided that the time had come to strike back, and no longer should they have to sacrifice young men and women to the cannibalistic demands of the bull-headed monster at the center of a maze. He disguised himself as one of the young men the next time this tribute was sent to Crete. He got on the boat, pretended to be just one of the other young men and not a prince at all, didn't tell anybody his name. He was dressed in the common clothes and not in his normal regal robes or his shining bronze armor. When he arrived at Crete, there was King Minos, there on the harbour wall, mocking the young men and the young women. He was cruel, and he liked to stand there and lord it up over them all, remind them all that their deaths were because of his power and they were to be sacrificed to his monster. But Theseus said, "Wait, I am the son of Poseidon." Now, just in case you don't know who Poseidon is the Greek god of the ocean. What, said the king. King Minos, you, the son of Poseidon? But you're just merely a commoner. Why should I believe that? Set me any task, said Theseus. Set me any task, and I will prove to you. Then, if I have proven to you that I am the son of Poseidon, you must stop this senseless murder of our young people. Ah, yes, of course, said Minos, not believing a word of it. And he took a gold ring from his finger and threw it out to sea. Theseus dived from the boat into the waves, down, down, down through the clear, green, blue water he went, down, down, down. And as he did, he prayed to Poseidon in his mind and called upon the sea god and asked for help. And sure enough, as he reached the sandy seabed, there was the ring, and next to it there was a golden crown. He took the ring and he took the crown, and while his lungs were bursting from holding his breath, he sped back up towards the surface, going up through the column of bubbles he had left behind until he burst through the top of the waves and showed the king the ring and the crown as proof that he was the son of Poseidon. He wasn't really the son of Poseidon, but he called on the sea god's help. Now, Minos did not like this. He did not like that he'd been proved wrong, and he certainly wasn't going to do what this young upstart boy asked. However, standing next to him on the harbour side were his two daughters, Princess Ariadne and Princess Phaedra. And they watched and they saw this young hero, this young man, coming up from the sea, bursting through the top of the waves with a golden ring in one hand and a crown in the other. And they thought, oh, he's lovely. Oh, and they fell in love with him there and then. Now, King Minos decided that he was going to send Theseus first into the labyrinth so that he would be killed by the Minotaur. And he was sentenced to death the very next morning. Now, when he was taken to the doors of the labyrinth, and there they were with the great carved double-headed battle axes, the labyrinth doors opened. Ariadne was there beside Theseus. As the guards began to walk away, she handed him a sword and also handed him a ball of string which she tied to a nail just by the door. And she said, unwind the string as you go in. When you meet the Minotaur, you must kill it. And if you manage to kill it, take the string and follow it all the way back out. Theseus thanked her and entered the labyrinth. It was dark. There were passages and turns and dead ends and false passageways everywhere. Shadows flickered in the darkness. Flaming torches on the wall was all that was there to light the passageways, and the walls, he began to realize, were not just red from the flames, but they were red from the blood of the Minotaur's victims. Deeper and deeper into the labyrinth he went, and as he went, he unraveled the string behind him. He tucked it into his belt, so as he walked, he still had a string that would lead him back to the beginning, should he be able to find and defeat the Minotaur. He walked for minutes, and the minutes turned into hours, and it felt almost like he'd been walking for days, until eventually in the distance, he could smell a disgusting smell, and he could hear a snuffling. It must be the Minotaur. Slowly, carefully, he crept closer and closer and closer through the passageways and corridors of the labyrinth until he reached the center. And there in the central room, there surrounded by bones on the floor, the bones of his victims, was the Minotaur. It was huge, the height of a very tall man and the width of a very strong, very big man. From the neck up, it was covered in fur. It had a bull's head and huge horns and a great big golden ring through its nostrils. Its feet weren't feet, but they were hooves like those of a bull. Its legs were like those of a bull, and it had a tail sticking out of the back. It saw Theseus, and it grinned and scowled, baring its teeth, But instead of the nice dentition that you would normally get in a herbivore for crunching and munching grass, it had sharp, pointed teeth, huge teeth for grabbing and ripping flesh. It lowered its head and pawed at the ground and charged at the hero. Quickly, Theseus, who'd been trained in the arts of warfare, ducked to the side. But the Minotaur grabbed him by the arm and tried to pull him towards him to bite him. But Theseus again had been trained. He was a prince. He knew how to fight. He knew how to wrestle. So quickly and expert, he turned and twisted the Minotaur's hand and escaped from his grip. The fight went backwards and forwards, with neither of them being able to get hold or advantage on the other, until suddenly Theseus, when he saw his moment, used the sword that Ariadne had given him and thrust it into the Minotaur's throat. And the Minotaur fell dead. Theseus had done it. He had slain the mighty Minotaur. And now, wiping the blade of his bronze sword on the fur of the animal to clean it, he turned round and picked up the string that Ariadne had left him. Carefully, not pulling it too hard so he didn't break it, he followed it in and out of doorways and round corners and through blind alleys and through dead ends and back out again, until eventually he could see daylight, and there were the doors to the entrance of the labyrinth. And there were the doors opened. He was free. And there was Princess Ariadne, and there was Princess Phaedra. Both of them had fallen in love with him, so of course he took both of them onto his boat immediately and rescued the other 13 slaves, the other 6 young men and the 7 young women that had been sent from Athens, back onto the boat, and the boat set sail home to Athens. And that is how Theseus defeated the Minotaur. Thank you.